Hello, and welcome to another Range unit of the Reek. And today we're taking a look at the Sturmpanzer KV-2. So, why did the Russians decide to stick a small building on top of a tank? Well, you see, after the experience in the Winter War in 1939, the Russians realized they wanted some heavy support guns for actually dealing with bunkers and heavily in place positions. There's a few prototype designs with other vehicles, but eventually they came round to sticking a 152mm howitzer on top of a KV tank. But they kept the KV tank the same, the chassis, but they completely changed the turret into this massive monstrosity. Now, to be fair, even though the turret was large and it was a very easy target, they did heavily armor it with 110mm of frontal armor and 75mm on the side, just for the turret alone. And of course I see their main operational debut during Operation Barbarossa, and it was a mixed bag. On one hand, like with a lot of the tanks the Germans were encountering, such as the T-34s and KV-1s, the KV-2 was a pretty fearsome tank, as its very thick armor was very hard to penetrate for the German guns at that time. Only really 88mm were strong enough to penetrate the KV tank frontally, heck, even on the side of its rather thick side armor. And its gun, the KV-2's gun that is, was definitely enough to put a rather big hole in any Panzer II or 3 or 4 that came at Ray. On the other hand, however, the majority of KV-2s that were lost weren't in combat, they just broke down, as the sheer rate of the turret and the stress on the tank in terms of the transmission, the gearbox, the turret would jam up a lot because the ball bearings would break, would just make the tanks operationally ineffective, and especially with the Russian crews not being well trained with the tanks at the time, they would usually just be left abandoned at the side of the road as the Russians would retreat during the initial stages of Barbarossa. So, funnily enough, as the war continued, the Russians would end up halting production on the KV tanks in favour of the IS tanks. So, by 1944, the only people still using the KV-2 were the Germans, as they managed to capture a bunch during the start of Operation Barbarossa. In-game, the Sturmpanzer KV-2 is a 100-point support tank available exclusively to the 1st Ski Division, and it has 2 weapons. So the weapon layout is pretty straightforward. You have one massive 152mm cannon with 8 armor penetration shells and 28 high explosive shells. The armor penetration shells are really scary. A 160mm pen, and more importantly 15 damage on penetration. You can pretty much kill the majority of tanks, and when you do get a penetration hit, it's just dead, like guaranteed dead. There won't be much of a tank left over. Of course, the accuracy isn't all that great, and the rate of fire is slow, but not that bad considering the caliber of the gun. And the high explosive shells are pretty self-explanatory. They make rather big high explosive kabooms. You also have a single hull-mounted machine gun. Up down to the miscellaneous stats, it has 110mm of frontal armor, strong top armor, 75mm on the side, and 65mm on the back. It goes a whopping 14km off-road and 25km on the road, has very bad stealth and very low optics. In battle, the Sturmpanzer KV-2 essentially fills in the role of the ISU-152, and it's a pretty interesting comparison between both units, because arguably the Sturmpanzer is better. The main reason is it has a higher fire rate on its main gun, and it's 20 points cheaper, but at the same time, you do have less frontal armor, and you have a worse machine gun. But also, you have more ammunition with the KV-2, which also helps out. Now, of course, one of the major disadvantages of the Sturmpanzer KV-2 is its speed, and, well, lack of it. It's extremely slow. It's one of the slowest tanks in game, I think, at 14km an hour off the road. Usually at the start of the match, if you buy a Sturmpanzer KV-2, it can take 3 to 4 minutes for it to actually reach the 50% line, so it can actually start doing its job of blowing stuff up. But oh boy, it's really good at blowing stuff up. Anti-tank guns, infantry, other tanks. The KV-2 can pretty much kill anything that comes its way, just as long as it's not in the air. because that 152mm gun does not mess about. Like I said, with the armor penetration shells, it will kill when it hits. And even though it has a low accuracy, I don't know if this is from my personal experience, this may be a bit of confirmation bias, I find that it is a little bit more accurate than what it seems to be. I always get pretty lucky hits with the KV-2, but I can't statistically prove this. This is just anecdotal evidence. But by God, this is such a useful unit to have in Skijager because you do not have a lot of armor in that division, really. You have some T-34-85s, some Stugs, but nothing really heavy. This is your heavy tank, and it's not even in the tank tab, it's in the support tab. You have okay availability with Sturmpanzer KV-2, you only get one card of them, and only available in A phase with 2 of them available. There's no reason to ever take the 1-star veterancy, you just want numbers in this. Apart from that, it's your KV-2 derp gun. It just blows stuff up. What are you expecting here? It's just funny that the only KV-2 in game is belonging to the Germans, so historically, that does make sense. And well, I'm going to leave it off. Yeah, this has been another Angry Unit of the Week. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as usual, please just take it easy.